Imagine a single book, so massive, so mysterious, that people believed it was written with the devil himself. Would you dare to open it? They call it the Devil's Bible, a manuscript said to have been finished in one night by a desperate monk who made a pact with Satan. But is it truth, or just terrifying legend? Locked within its pages are curses, secrets, and one chilling portrait of the devil. For centuries, this book has haunted kings, priests, and scholars alike. If I told you the largest medieval manuscript was rumored to be written with the devil's help, would you believe me? Tonight, we open the Codex Gigas. This isn't just another medieval book. This is the Devil's Bible, a manuscript so strange it's been blamed for plagues, curses, and even the fall of empires.
In the early 13th century, in the rugged heart of medieval Bohemia, there stood a Benedictine monastery where silence, prayer, and discipline reigned supreme. The monks within devoted their lives to God, taking solemn vows of obedience, chastity, and humility. Yet in this sanctuary of piety, a legend was born that has haunted centuries of storytellers, historians, and skeptics alike. It begins with a single man, Brother Herman. Herman was not a monk who slipped quietly into the background of monastery life. His name endures because of a terrible crime, an atrocity so vile that it shattered his vows and demanded the ultimate punishment. The exact nature of Herman's sin has been lost to history, buried under layers of whispers and speculation. Some say he betrayed his brethren. Others hinted blasphemy so grave it could not be forgiven. Whatever the truth, the monastery's judgment was swift. Herman was to be walled up alive, condemned to die in a solitary tomb of stone and silence.
Imagine the scene, the cold clang of trowels, the scrape of mortar, and the suffocating weight of stone walls rising around him. With every brick, the world of light and air was sealed away, until only a narrow gap remained through which the monks passed their last message. Death awaited him here. But desperation makes men bold. With his final moments slipping away, Herman cried out for mercy. Perhaps he expected silence. Instead, the abbot himself answered, not with compassion, but with a challenge that seemed designed to mock the condemned. If Herman wished to live, he was to perform a task no mortal could achieve. In a single night, he must create a book, a tome that contained all of the world's knowledge. A cruel jest, impossible by design. Yet, Herman accepted. Perhaps because he saw the bargain as a flicker of hope, however faint. Perhaps because he had nothing left to lose. The monks shoved parchment and ink through the gap, and Herman began. Hour after hour, he bent to the impossible labor, quill scratching furiously across stretched parchment. His hand flew, his mind reeled, but the night passed quickly, and the work ahead was immeasurable. At some point, a darker thought must have entered his mind. Alone, terrified, and desperate, Herman invoked a presence no monk was meant to call upon. He bargained not with his abbot, nor with God, but with the devil. His soul in exchange for salvation, his damnation in exchange for a book completed.
And when dawn came, the impossible had been achieved. Before the abbot lay a colossal manuscript, perfectly ordered and adorned, its Das knowledge compiled as though written by an inhuman hand. As a mark of gratitude, or perhaps as a grim warning, Herman painted a portrait of the devil within its pages, a full, grotesque, commanding image unlike any found in other holy texts. The abbot, stunned, spared his life. The book was kept, and from that night forward, whispers followed the Codex Gigas, the so-called Devil's Bible. For centuries, this manuscript has been surrounded by fear and fascination. It is not merely the legend that chills the blood, but the physical
Born. A collection of medical treatises, calendars, and practical knowledge, and, most mysteriously, writings on magic, protective charms, and exorcism rituals, works that blur the line between the sacred and the forbidden. It is, in essence, a library bound into one colossal tome. Where other monasteries might collect dozens or hundreds of books, the Codex Gigas brought them together into one colossal tome.
Yet, for all its completeness, the manuscript is not whole. At some point in its long journey through history, 10 pages were deliberately removed. They were not lost by accident, nor torn by wear, but cut out cleanly. Their absence has haunted scholars ever since. What did they contain? Some speculate forbidden knowledge, perhaps apocalyptic visions or dangerous rituals. Others suggest mundane reasons, political texts too sensitive to survive, or writings deemed heretical by later hands. Whatever their contents, those pages have never resurfaced. Leaving a gap as tantalizing as it is unsettling. And then there is the page that has made the Codex infamous, the portrait of the devil. On page 290, across an otherwise empty spread, the devil is depicted in grotesque detail. His body looms large, painted in bold colors, clawed hands, red horns, 2 tongues, and eyes that pierce through time. Strangely, he wears an ermine loincloth, a garment traditionally associated with kings and royalty. Here, the devil is not a wretched outcast, but a ruler, the self-proclaimed Prince of Darkness. What makes this even more striking is what lies across from the devil's page. The facing leaf contains a full-page depiction of heaven, ordered, structured, and divine. When displayed together, the 2 images form a visual allegory, good and evil, side by side, balanced in eternal opposition. It is this duality that fascinates historians. Was Herman celebrating his pact with the devil, or warning his readers of the cost of sin? Was this a thank you to his dark patron, or a desperate plea for redemption? The ambiguity has only deepened the aura of mystery. Yet, perhaps the most bewildering feature of the Codex Gigas is not its content or even its haunting illustration, but its uniformity. Across its hundreds of pages, the handwriting is flawless. Not once does the script waver in quality or style. There is no evidence of fatigue, no change in skill, no faltering caused by age, illness, or time. To produce such a manuscript, experts say, would have required at least 25 to 30 years of continuous labor. Yet if that were the case, why does the hand not age? Why is every line the same, as they're written in a single burst of effort? This mystery has led many back to the legend. If the Codex could not have been created by mortal endurance, perhaps it truly was the work of something else, something darker.
If the Codex Gigas is remarkable for its size and content, it is even more extraordinary for its execution. Every manuscript has a human touch, tiny flaws, shifts in ink color, changes in style, the evidence of years of labor left behind in the strokes of a pen. But in this book, none of that appears. Instead, there is only perfection, page after page, line after line. Scholars who have studied the manuscript closely often make the same observation. The handwriting of the Codex is unnervingly uniform. It is not simply neat, it is exact. Every letter, every flourish, every line appears to have been drawn by a steady hand that never tired, never aged, and never faltered. In some ways, it feels mechanical, almost impossible to believe that one man with quill and ink could have produced it. Modern paleographers, specialists who analyze ancient handwriting, have estimated that if the Codex were the work of a single scribe, it would have taken at least 5 years of continuous writing every day from dawn to dusk just to copy the text alone. That figure does not account for the illustrations, the intricate decorations, or the elaborate borders that adorn many of the pages. When these are included, the labor required would have stretched to 25 or even 30 years of ceaseless work.
And yet the writing never changes. There is no evidence that the scribe aged during its creation. No decline in eyesight, no stiffening of joints, no sign of illness or distraction. The work is steady, flawless, and chillingly consistent. This is perhaps the greatest puzzle of all. How could one man sustain such perfection over decades, when even the most disciplined scribes left behind a trail of inconsistency? This has given rise to two competing theories. The first is that the Codex was indeed the work of a single man, Brother Herman, sometimes called Herman the Recluse, or Hermanus Inclusus, as he signed within the manuscript itself. The Latin word inclusus has been a matter of debate. To some, it reflects the original legend. Herman was enclosed, punished by being sealed within the monastery walls. To others, the term implies voluntary isolation, much like the English word recluse. In this interpretation, Herman may have withdrawn from the world of his own accord, devoting his entire existence to the book. It is possible, then, that Herman spent the majority of his life laboring over this manuscript, isolated from the outside world with no purpose other than the completion of his colossal work. If this is true, then the Codex is not merely a book, but the life's work of a man who poured every breath and heartbeat into ink and parchment. The second theory, however, is far darker. Some scholars believe that the Codex may not have been the work of one man at all, but of many scribes working in collaboration. Yet if this were the case, why does the handwriting show no variation? Even the best trained scribes had subtle differences in their strokes, differences that experts today can identify with precision. In the Codex, there is only one hand visible. It is this uniformity that keeps alive the legend of a supernatural hand, perhaps even the devil's. The manuscript itself offers no easy answers. Hidden within its margins is the mysterious phrase Hermanus Inclusus, the scribe's signature. This is the only personal mark in the entire work, the only whisper of the human who created it. But whether that whisper is the voice of a prisoner forced to labor under punishment or a recluse who chose a life of solitary devotion remains unknown. And then there is the devil's portrait itself. Was it drawn as a gesture of thanks, as the legend suggests, or was it a warning, an emblem of the temptation Herman believed he had succumbed to? Across from it lies an image of heaven, serene and ordered. Together, the two images may represent not celebration, but conflict. The eternal battle between salvation and damnation played out on parchment. Whatever the truth, the Codex Gigas carries with it a haunting paradox. It is at once a monument to human achievement and a reminder of human limits. Its scale, its detail, and its flawless execution seem to defy what one man alone could accomplish. And yet, here it is, a real book, a physical object that still sits in Stockholm's National Library today, daring us to explain it. When modern readers look upon its pages, it is difficult not to feel the same mixture of awe and unease that medieval monks must have felt. Was this manuscript the product of unshakable discipline, or of a soul that had bargained away eternity for the chance to create something greater than himself? Was Herman a genius, a prisoner, a recluse, or merely a legend wrapped in ink and parchment? These questions have never been fully answered. And as the Codex passed from monastery to emperor, from kingdom to kingdom, its reputation only grew darker.
For with each new owner, the Devil's Bible seemed to leave behind not enlightenment, but ruin.
A manuscript as massive and mysterious as the Codex Gigas was destined to leave a trail through history, and its journey has been as dramatic as the legends surrounding its creation. From the moment it left its original monastery, the book carried with it a reputation of ill fortune. Some believe this was nothing more than coincidence, while others insist it was the shadow of a curse, the devil's hand lingering in the margins of the book. The first great twist of fate occurred in 1477, roughly 2 centuries after its creation. The Benedictine monastery in Podlasiec, where the Codex was first kept, had fallen on hard times. Monasteries in medieval Europe often relied on land, donations, and royal patronage to survive, and when such sources dried up, even the most sacred institutions could crumble. Facing financial ruin, the monks made a desperate decision. They sold their greatest treasure, the Codex Gigas.
The book was transferred to another Benedictine monastery in Brevno, near Prague. It was meant to be safe there, guarded and honored as one of Christendom's most precious manuscripts. Yet, not long after, tragedy struck. The original Podlasica monastery was destroyed during the Hussite Wars, a brutal religious conflict that tore through Bohemia in the early 15th century. Some whispered that the destruction was divine punishment. Others claimed it was simply the hand of history. But for those who believed in curses, the timing was too perfect to ignore. The monastery that had given birth to the Devil's Bible had been erased from the map. The Codex remained at Brevno for more than a century, until 1593, when it was loaned to Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II. Rudolf was a monarch with an infamous fascination for the strange and the forbidden. He collected alchemical texts, mystical artifacts, and works on the destroyed.
This is perhaps the most remarkable part of its story. During the Inquisition, when thousands of works deemed heretical or satanic were burned, the Codex survived. While countless manuscripts were lost forever, the Devil's Bible not only endured, but remained in pristine condition. Why? Some say it was preserved because of its sheer size and beauty, a work too magnificent to destroy. Others argue that fear itself protected it, that no one dared to touch what was believed to be the devil's own work. Today, the Codex Gigas rests in the National Library of Sweden, one of the best preserved medieval manuscripts in the world. It lies behind glass, heavily guarded, studied by historians and paleographers who still puzzle over its mysteries. But to those who stand before it, the aura is undeniable. Its size alone is overwhelming, its reputation chilling, and its survival through centuries of war, fire, and upheaval almost miraculous. Or perhaps infernal. For many, the Codex Gigas is not merely a book, but an omen, a relic that reminds us how thin the line is between myth and history, and how powerfully a story can shape the way we see the past. But the question remains, if the Codex is truly cursed, why has it survived so long? And why, in all its centuries, has no hand dared to destroy it? The answer may lie not only in its legends, but in the enduring mystery of the missing pages and the flawless handwriting that defies explanation.
For all that has been written, studied, and speculated about the Codex Gigas, the truth is this: much about the manuscript remains unexplained. Nearly 8 centuries after its creation, the so-called Devil's Bible is still wrapped in shadows, its secrets just out of reach. Scholars, theologians, and conspiracy theorists alike continue to ask questions, many of which may never be answered. The first mystery is the handwriting itself. Experts in paleography, the study of old handwriting, agree that the script is remarkably consistent from the first page to the last. In most medieval manuscripts, even those written by a single monk, handwriting changes subtly over time. The ink grows lighter or darker depending on batches. The letters shift in size. The pen strokes reflect changes in mood, age, or health. Yet the Codex Gigas shows none of these variations. It looks as if it were written in a single sitting by a hand that never grew tired. Modern experiments suggest that producing such a work under normal conditions would have taken between 20 and 30 years, but no evidence exists that multiple scribes ever worked on it. Was this the work of a single monk who labored in silence for decades? Or was it, as legend claims, the result of a desperate man aided by something beyond human endurance?
The second mystery is the missing pages. 12 folios, 24 pages in total, were deliberately cut out of the book. We cannot know when this was done, nor by whose hand. Were they removed by a monk trying to suppress dangerous content? Or by a later owner eager to conceal forbidden knowledge? Speculation runs wild. Some believe those pages may have contained rituals too blasphemous to survive, or even personal confessions of the scribe himself. One theory suggests the missing pages might have described the location of hidden treasures or secret knowledge. Others whisper that they contained dark prayers meant to summon forces best left alone. Without them, the Codex Gigas remains incomplete, a puzzle with crucial pieces missing. And perhaps that is why the manuscript feels so haunting. It is not just what we see that unsettles us, but what has been deliberately concealed.
The third mystery lies in its content itself. The Codex is not only massive in scale, but unusual in composition. Alongside the entire Bible, it contains medical treatises, exorcism rituals, a calendar of saints, and even a list of all the monasteries in Bohemia. It is as if the scribe tried to capture the sum of human knowledge at the time, sacred and profane, within a single volume. Why? Was the manuscript intended to be a universal book, a kind of encyclopedia of medieval learning? Or was it meant as a spiritual weapon, a text capable of instructing monks, curing illnesses, and defending against the devil himself? Then there is the portrait of Satan. No other medieval Bible dares to depict the devil so prominently, let alone in such terrifying detail. The image is grotesque, with its monstrous horns, talons, and red tongue. Why was it placed there, occupying an entire page, when the rest of the manuscript is dedicated to God's word? Some believe it was meant as a warning, a reminder of the devil's power, a visual sermon in ink. Others, more superstitious, claim it was the scribe's bargain made visible, a signature of the deal struck in desperation.
Over the centuries, attempts have been made to explain these mysteries scientifically. Researchers have tested the ink, measured the parchment, and estimated the time it would take to write such a book. Yet for every explanation, new questions arise. If it took 20 years to write, how did the handwriting never change? If the missing pages were harmless, why remove them so carefully? If the book was cursed, why has it survived when countless other manuscripts were lost to fire, war, or decay? Some suggest that the Codex Gigas is an example of medieval genius misunderstood, a project of a dedicated monk whose labor and vision were far greater than we give credit for. To others, it remains a supernatural relic, a scar left on history by forces we cannot fully grasp. Even today, visitors who stand before the Devil's Bible in Stockholm report a sense of awe and sometimes unease. The manuscript radiates a presence that is difficult to explain. Its sheer size overwhelms the eye, its strange content unsettles the mind, and its legends haunt the imagination.
Whether or not one believes in curses, one thing is undeniable. The Codex Gigas is a survivor, a relic of medieval Europe that continues to inspire fear, fascination, and wonder.
Perhaps that is the greatest mystery of all. Not whether the monk truly made a pact with the devil, nor what was written on the missing pages, but why this book still speaks to us across the centuries. Why, out of all the manuscripts of the Middle Ages, it is this one, massive, ominous, and imperfect, that we cannot look away from. The Codex Gigas is more than a manuscript. It is a mirror of our deepest fears and desires, a reminder that the line between myth and reality is thin, and that sometimes the power of a story is stronger than the truth itself. And so, the Devil's Bible rests, locked safely behind glass, a paradox of faith and fear. We may never know the full truth of its creation, but as long as it endures, it will continue to whisper its mysteries, challenging us to wonder, to doubt, and perhaps to believe.
When we step back and look at the Codex Gigas in its entirety, we find ourselves standing at a crossroads between history and myth. On one hand, it is undeniably real, 165 pounds of vellum, leather, and ink carefully preserved in the Royal Library of Stockholm. Its size alone demands awe. Its flawless script inspires admiration, and its illuminated details whisper of painstaking effort. On the other hand, there is the legend, the chilling story of a monk condemned to the walls of his monastery who turned to the devil to accomplish the impossible. This duality, the tangible and the mythical, has defined the Devil's Bible for nearly 8 centuries. The truth is that no one fully understands how this book came to be. Historians can measure parchment, analyze handwriting, and estimate time frames, but the manuscript still resists complete explanation. If a single scribe truly created it, then Hermann, or whoever the Hermanus Inclusus was, must have spent decades of his life in near isolation, his pen never faltering, his body never betraying him to illness or age. Such endurance feels almost inhuman, as though some unseen force guided his hand. Was it simply an extraordinary monk with unmatched discipline, or was there something more? That question keeps the legend alive.
And then there are the missing pages, 10 sheets carefully removed at some unknown point in history. Were they destroyed because they contained dangerous secrets? Were they stolen by an owner unwilling to share their contents? Or were they deliberately hidden away to keep humanity from something it was never meant to see? The absence of these pages is almost more haunting than their possible contents. They remind us that knowledge, once lost, leaves holes in history that can never be fully patched. The Devil's portrait itself adds another layer of intrigue. Why dedicate an entire page in such a massive work to such a fearsome figure? Perhaps it was meant as a warning that temptation and pride lurk close to even the most sacred projects. Or perhaps it was a confession, a silent nod to the bargain that gave the book life. Set opposite the image of heaven, the portrait becomes more than illustration. It becomes theology made flesh, a reminder of the eternal struggle between good and evil.
Then we consider the so-called curse. The Codex Gigas has passed through fire, war, theft, and political downfall, always dragging with it a reputation for misfortune. Was it coincidence that Emperor Rudolf II, obsessed with the occult, lost his throne while in possession of the book? Was it mere bad luck that flames engulfed the Swedish castle where it was kept, nearly destroying it? Skeptics say yes, pointing out that history is filled with calamities and that humans naturally connect them to objects of power. But others wonder, perhaps there is something about the Codex, something that refuses to be forgotten, something that demands to shape destiny wherever it goes. And yet, for all its ominous